Wander Wealthy Podcast, episode 84. Hello. Welcome back to the Wander Wealthy Podcast. If you're new here, my name is Tess Wicks, and this show is one where we usually talk about money, and typically I'm interviewing another woman of the world about money. Or sometimes we talk about personal finance, maybe travel, or anything else that really comes up for us. And every once in a while, usually once or twice a month, I do a solo show, which is exactly what you're getting today. And today, it's not necessarily going to be a solo show on money, but more a story that I have actually really been struggling to share. I think I've recorded this podcast about 100 times. And it's because it's a very personal and vulnerable thing for me to share. The long and short of it is that the past 6 months, and these are specifically the 6 months that I've been living in Italy, have been some of the most challenging and difficult months for me in my entire life. And it's weird because I would equate it, and here's a little money comparison for you. I would equate my emotional shifts like the stock market. They've been very volatile, and not in like the bad, abusive kind of way, but volatile as in there are points where I've been so extremely happy, happier than I've ever been in my life. And then there are points where I'm very sad or very frustrated. I either miss home or I'm frustrated with the new norms that there are to get used to living in Italy, and you'll hear more about that as I share my specific struggle that I want to share with you. But this has been a lot more challenging than I really anticipated it being. And that's what has been extremely hard. It's shocked me in ways that I didn't expect. And that's why I think I've had a lot of like little breakdowns every once in a while, because I'm struggling with learning the language and feeling comfortable doing little everyday tasks that I used to do without even thinking about it. Now, if I go to the grocery store or go to the gym or go into a Sephora, I practice over and over in my head this new language and, what I'm going to say in response to people asking me follow-up questions that I didn't expect. And somehow I've developed this social anxiety a little bit, which is totally weird for me because it's never been the case for me in the past. And that's just something that, comes with the territory of learning a new language and moving to a new country. At least for someone with a personality like me, because I know other people, it's totally different. But for me, has been really difficult and didn't realize that I would deal with these things. Some other things are just understanding the cultural norms, the little nuances and rules that are in place in new countries that you live in, but even new towns and communities, going to school or at new gyms. Every little new place that you go to, even if it's not in a new country, has their little rules that everyone just kind of, they're intuitive, they learn it and they figure it out, and you have to do the same. But with learning a new language and then being immersed into this new environment that has their own little rules, and then dealing with a lot of other things, like for instance, Italy being an extremely bureaucratic and slow-moving country to get some of the bigger things done in life, it's been a learning experience, and it's been a challenge, and it's been a struggle. So all of these various struggles that I've been dealing with have really added up. But I do have one particular struggle. I have had a lot of resistance around sharing this struggle or challenge that I've been facing, because to me, it, for the longest time, never really felt valid, at least when I verbalized it. It just sounded like I was complaining about something that I should just be grateful for. And more recently, I've realized how important this aspect of my life is that I just didn't realize was that important. And I promise I'll get to the details in a little bit. I just don't want to lose you in the first couple minutes of this show. But I've realized that these things are important to me, and come to terms with the fact that no matter how blessed you feel or fortunate and grateful you are for these opportunities you've been presented with, the challenges and the struggles you have are still very valid. And the exact opposite of the spectrum of course, is true as well. If you've come on hard times and you're struggling with various aspects, no matter what, us as individual human beings, if we are facing a challenge or a struggle and we're frustrated with the process we're going through and we need to vent about it or we need to do the work to overcome it and that work feels hard for us, all these feelings you have, they're valid and that's okay. So that's something that I first had to come to terms with before I could even open up and share this. But the main reason I wanted to share my story and my struggles and challenges with you all is not because I want sympathy or anyone to feel bad for me, but it's because I want to share the development work that I've been doing to work on this and to bring myself more joy and happiness as I work through these challenges. And that, I think, is super applicable to just about anyone. I think at any given point in our life or our year or several points in our year, there comes times where we are feeling like we're behind in life or we're just unhappy, unsettled, uncomfortable, or frustrated with where we're at in specific situations. Whether that's in your career or your specific job and you're trying to find a new job, but a lot of the things are out of your control. And so you're just going through the process, but you're frustrated and you're unhappy with your current job and this whole process. Or maybe you're unhappy or uncomfortable or frustrated with your relationship status. But a lot of things are out of your control. I mean, there are things that are in your control, but the universe also has to conspire for us to land the perfect man or woman in front of us to fall in love with. Or you might be like me. And the biggest struggle that I've been facing recently, which again, I'll preface, feels stupid for me to share, but it's valid, is my home, my dwelling place. And I think it feels a little ridiculous because I never really realized how important my environment was where I spent most of my time. I work from home, so I work here. I obviously do everything else that everyone else does in their home, like cook and clean and do the laundry and watch TV and cozy up. But I just didn't really think about how important it was. I had an idea, but until I moved to Italy, I always thought, I'm a super flexible and adaptable human being. I love the adventure of visiting and traveling to new places and the idea of living in a new place. I'll be fine wherever I land. But that really hasn't been the case for me. So let me tell the story. And then, of course, at the end, I'm going to be sharing some exercises that I've been doing that have significantly increased my happiness levels, decreased my frustration with the process of finding a new place, which is something we're still doing. But while we're doing this process, I'm finding ways to also not be unhappy with the current situation. And I think that, again, is applicable to other situations you might be dealing with, whether it be career, relationship, the community that you live in, the country that you live in, or whatever else it could be. Just a situation where you're trying to get to a different place, but some of the things that you're doing are out of your control. And so maybe you're frustrated with the process or the waiting time of trying to get there. So for those of you who are new to the podcast, let me back up and do a little backstory. I moved to Italy in April of 2018. And prior to that, I was living in Chicago in my own condo that I had handpicked for myself way back in the day when I was commuting to a 9-to-5 job, in which that commute had me so unhappy and frustrated that I was in the market for a new place, and the biggest, most important thing was to find a place that was closer to public transportation, so I didn't have to spend so much time walking outside in the freezing cold. But of course, there were other important things to me too, like finding a wonderful place that I could really turn to make a home that was cozy and comfortable and white, light, and bright, and that was in a location that would feel more like a neighborhood, more like a tight-knit community, which isn't always the easiest to find in Chicago, but it's doable. I wanted there to be coffee shops and places to eat and just events going on, and eventually I did find that place. And I made it my home for a good 4.5 years. But during that time, I had met my boyfriend, who is Italian and lives in Italy and works here and loves it here. And we met on a business trip in Barcelona, in which within 3 days we decided, oh, let's try this out. Let's see if we can make this relationship work, which both of us, being very logical and practical human beings, realized it was really irrational and a crazy thing to do. So we turned our relationship motto into fail fast. That is what we told everyone we were doing with each other, basically. Because we decided, well, if we succeed, great. But if we fail, great. We will just lick our wounds and go back into the dating pool, because a long distance relationship between America, Chicago specifically, and Italy is a lot of time and money to invest. And of course, energy and love and passion and so on and so forth. But we decided that if we were going to do this, if we were going to pursue this relationship, we were going to pursue it and commit 100% and open ourselves up to the potential that we were going to fail, like crash and burn. So we committed to a year, and for a year we were dating long distance, traveling back and forth, which was amazing and a great thing, but not sustainable for us, especially financially. So we got to the point where we were like, okay, we're at that next step. What's that next step that we're going to take where we can really fail fast? And that was for one of us to move so that we could live in the same place. And me being the more flexible of the couple with my job, I was able to make that move since I can work this business from anywhere in the world. So I made the move to Italy. After living in Chicago and being very comfortable and confident and settled, I picked up and I moved into my boyfriend's 7 years in the making bachelor pad in the suburbs of Milan. Now, I couldn't move and just do nothing. I had to get a visa, and the visa we decided to get was a student visa. So I'm here taking Italian language classes, in which I have to go to school every day for about an hour and a half. But my commute to school is about an hour long there and then an hour back. Now, I know a lot of people do commutes, and some people because they have to, some people because they want to. I am not a commuting person, and the thing about our situation is, since my boyfriend has lived in this apartment, he doesn't make me pay rent because he's lived here for years on his own, paying the rent. And I contribute it to our relationship in other ways, but I'm also very willing to contribute so that we can move to a closer location. Now, on top of the commute, and these are smaller things, but the apartment isn't necessarily one I would have picked out if I was making the decision. And it's definitely not in a location in the suburbs where I'm wild and crazy about living either. So I know you're probably thinking, well, Tess, there's a pretty simple solution here. Why don't you just find a new place to live? Especially if I'm willing to contribute to a new place. And that's exactly what we are trying to do. But this is where the frustrations of living in Italy come in. I like to say that everything you love about Italy when you travel here are the exact things that will frustrate you about living in Italy. Specifically if you're an American moving to Italy. So as I had mentioned, Italy is an extremely bureaucratic country. I mean, you have to get permission from the government, kind of in a way, to quit your job. And there's reasons for that, because Italian citizens, employees, renters, even homeowners, they're much more protected by the government. But in order to be protected, there's a lot more hoops that you have to jump through in order to acquire something like a job or a new apartment to live in. So the apartment search has been ongoing. We've been doing it for over a year, even before I moved here, because I knew, having spent some time with my boyfriend in his bachelor pad, that this wasn't really where I wanted to end up. So believe me, we've been doing the work, but the Italian system and also just, the selection. I mean, Italy as a culture and with its huge, enormous history, it's different than finding an apartment in America. You can look and find updated everything that are light and bright and cozy when you're searching for an apartment to rent in Chicago, but doing so in Italy, Italian homes aren't necessarily up to date. There's just not a lot of updates being made, and if they are, they're generally pretty far out of the city because the cities are really flippin' old, and you can't build a building higher than the Little Maria that sits on top of the cathedral. So there's no expansion upwards. It's really only outwards. So if you do want something that's closer to the city center, specifically so that I can make a shorter commute, you're going to find an older building that isn't as updated. So the inventory is much smaller, and just the way they do business when it comes to finding apartments or even, owning homes, there's just a lot more to it. For instance, and I just want to share this because I think it would shock the American listeners, is if you find an apartment, you generally have to sign a 4+4 contract. That means you sign a contract for 4 years, and then after the first 4 years, it can auto-renew into another 4 years. So there's no 1-year contracts like we typically have in the States. And yes, you can break the contract, but you typically have to give the landlord usually 6 months notice. Some places might have 3, but usually it's 6 months. So you can get out of your contract in the middle of the 4 years, but you have to know 6 months in advance before you're going to move. Otherwise, you're on the hook for 6 months of rent, or maybe 3 months if you give 6 months notice and then know you're moving in 3 months or something. And then on top of that, and this is really the reason why you'll find a lot of Italians in their 30s still living with their parents, because it almost costs the same to put a down payment on a house as it does to just move into a new apartment. Because a lot of apartments will require you to put a 3-month security deposit down, so 3 months of rent in a security deposit, and then some will require you to put 3 months of rent, pay it up front. So when you first move into an apartment, you have to pay basically 6 months of the rental costs up front. We're very fortunate to have that amount of money, but to me, that is such a big commitment to make, knowing that you have to put all that money up front and then you have to give a 6-month notice. And we're kind of in this weird transition period where we might not even be staying in Italy if my boyfriend gets a new job or something else happens. So it's kind of like we're between a rock and a hard place with our situation. It's not easy in Italy to just find a new place and move. So we've been going through this process for quite a long time. We've really been taking a lot of action to change the situation that might be making us unhappy. But it is still a really long and frustrating process. And it really got to the point for me more recently where I was just so sick of it. I was sick of searching. I was sick of going through this process because, it just feels like we can never win. We can never find the right place at the right price. And then, there's a lot of random little things you have to do. And half the time, the places that are on the websites that you're looking at are actually already being rented to someone. And it's just not a very easy system to work out. And I'll be honest, a lot of other things similar to trying to find an apartment, being able to do a lot of other things in Italy are a lot like this. You have no idea how you are supposed to do it, and there's no easy solution. You just have to go through the mud. Like I've been saying, I feel like I've been trekking through mud for 6 to 9 months because we've really been working on this thing since before I even moved here. So I got to the point where I was just ready to give up. And I was just going to feel bad for myself and be upset and be frustrated and stew in this unhappiness and also feel stupid for, complaining about it, because to me it feels like a really material and kind of like shallow thing to be mad about and to be unhappy with. But, I've had to come to terms with my challenges are valid, and things that make me happy, no matter what it is that they are, I can't hold judgment against myself. And so after coming to terms with that my challenge, my struggle, it's valid and it's okay to feel this way, I decided that I was also going to stop feeling this way to the extent that I had control over it. Because the point is here, there's a lot of things that we try to do, whether it's to get a new job or find a relationship or whatever it is, find a new home in Italy where you have very little control over the situation, and that's just it. You don't have a lot of control over the end game. You can do as much work leading up to it, but it's up to someone else to give you that job. It's up to, I don't know who it's up to find your soulmate or whatever, whoever you want to be dating at this time. So here is what I've been doing that has completely turned around my feelings of frustration and of discomfort and of unhappiness and of feeling stuck. I made the conscious decision to enjoy the little things, take really small actions that I knew would make me happy in this moment. Things that I do have control over and changes that I can make that previously I just wasn't doing because I was like, well, it's going to change. I'm just going to look towards that next thing and hope that that next step is going to make me happier. So finding this new apartment, that's really what's going to change my feelings and my frustration. So I'm just going to keep being mad or unhappy and dwell in this place of frustration until we just find that next step. But there's a lot of things you can do now to at least enjoy the process and make your life 1% better every single day. And if you're stubborn like me and you're in the stubborn mood, you just don't do it out of, spite or out of anger or just dwelling in your frustration. So for the longest time, we have these really hideous orange walls. I personally just hate the color orange. It's just my pet peeve. So we have these orange walls that I've been staring at and been hating. And obviously I can paint the walls, but I don't because, we're going to move. And what if we move in a month? Or what if we, get a new job and have to move out of the country? Or what if? So I waste a lot of time, or I had been wasting a lot of time being frustrated and being unhappy with these orange walls and these couches and some other things that are left over from my boyfriend's bachelor days that I could so easily change. And yes, maybe it's going to cost me a couple $100s, but isn't a couple $100 worth it for making yourself 1% happier every single day? Within reason, there are a lot of things, small things, that I can do that I do have control over that will completely shift my mood, no matter how ridiculous they are, that will put me in a much happier place, that will put me in a much more productive place, that will take away that frustration and at least let me enjoy the process until we do find that new place and move into that. And then congrats to the landlord that actually owns this apartment. It got a makeover. And instead of just spending so much time being frustrated with your frustration or being mad about the process or being upset about your current situation and kind of, victimizing yourself, you take the little actions. Even if you know that at the end of the road, you don't have a lot of control over what the ultimate is because it's up to someone else to make that final decision. We all know that there's light at the end of the tunnel, but there's also a lot of light within the tunnel. Little holes that shine little lights that make you a little bit happier, a little more content, a little less frustrated, and embrace the process. If you're single and you're trying to find that man, enjoy the aspects of being single that you won't get to enjoy when you're in a relationship. If you're in a job that you hate and you're trying to find that new job and you've been so frustrated with this process of applying and getting denied or interviewing and then not making it to the next level or interviewing all the way to the end and getting let down, find the little things that you can do in your job now that you have control over, that you have opportunities for. And if you're thinking, I'm not going to put myself out there for this other opportunity in this current role because what if I get a new job tomorrow? Then I don't want to commit to this. Who cares? Just commit to it. Because you might not get that new job tomorrow or next month or next year. And making this small choice and this small move that will improve your working life, even just by 1%, is going to be worth it. And if you have to let someone down because you do find a new job tomorrow, Well, help them transition in the best way possible so you can set that next person up for success so you can move on to your happier place. But that's the thing, is we have to stop procrastinating for the sake of believing that that next step is really going to be it. Because if we do that, I feel like the next step will never be it. We might even get there and realize, oh, this isn't it. So I'm going to procrastinate my happiness until we get to the next step or to the next step. And then we just start living this like stanky life that doesn't make us happy. So here's what I've been doing. I decided, all right, I spend the most of my time in the living room, the one with the orange walls that I don't like, and the couches that are super uncomfortable. And you know what? I'm going to do something about this. So first step, I rearranged the room, something that made a little bit more sense. Why I had never done that before? I don't know. I was being lazy. I was being stubborn, whatever it was. I decided, you know what? We're going to put that part of me away and we're going to become optimistic about this current place and enjoy it until we get to move. Get the most enjoyment out of it as I can while we're here. And the next step is to paint the walls. Because why not? Painting is therapeutic anyway. And yeah, it'll cost us some money and it'll cost me some time, but at the end of the day, I think it'll make me at least 1% happier or maybe more productive. We also need to remember and really prioritize what we know will make us happy. And that's the biggest thing. That's what's been really hard for me, is coming to terms with knowing that my environment makes me more productive and makes me more happy. And I'm not just going to go spend money that I don't have. I'm going to save up and make sure. I've already started a spreadsheet that has all the things I want to get for this place. And that's how I approach this. But you got to figure out what's going to work for you. My lasting message for you today is, if you feel like you're in this spot, if you feel like you've been trudging through mud, trying to get to that next place, and you know that's going to be the secret to your happiness, maybe realize that you don't know. And despite how frustrating the process may be, do everything you can. Take small actions that you know will bring more joy to the process, at least, while you work towards that next thing. Do that thing that's going to make your day 1% brighter. And that could be to paint the walls, or it might be to put yourself out there for this new opportunity at your work that you've been considering, but you haven't really committed to because you are pretty sure you're going to get a new job soon. Or it's to put yourself out there as a single woman and enjoy your life. Invest in your friendships or invest in yourself and use this time that you have that you aren't spending with a significant other to really, use it in a selfish way, in a way that's going to bring you at least 1% more joy, and embrace it. So that's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for letting me share, be open, honest, and vulnerable. I hope that it resonates on some level and you can really use it and apply it to any situation that you're going through right now in your life. And I'd love to hear more what you thought about this episode, what you might be struggling with, or maybe you just want to give me some insider tips on how to find a better apartment in Italy. I'm open to anything. I invite you to come to the Wealthy Wanderers private Facebook community. That's where all of our conversations take place, from this podcast, from my YouTube channel, from my blog. Go to wanderwealthy.com/FB to get in. And until next time, I hope you all wander wealthy.